Hello, and welcome back to The Missing Link in Your Healing, episode 29. I'm on my own today because Loretta is attending a homeopathic conference in Johannesburg. I'm going to talk today about, is there a Cancer personality? It's quite a big topic. So, of course, the definitive answer is not a simple yes or a simple no. As Loretta and I have talked about in most of our episodes, we cannot reduce the cause of cancer or any illness for that matter down to a single origin. Getting really sick it takes time often, and it's multifaceted, the cause, as is the healing. So, is there a particular personality that will cause cancer? Well, we can't say that, but what we can say, and all of what I'm going to say today is based on research from psychoneuroimmunology and other similar type research, which has shown this in studies that go back quite long. And also from my own journey, because this certainly was a major part of why I got sick and how I helped myself heal. So while we cannot say that any particular personality causes cancer, we can with certainty say that there are personality features that increase the risk because they are more likely to generate psychological stress. So it's this stress that creates a problem within our bodies. And we've talked about this in episode 5. Loretta did a whole episode about how this is hidden, mostly hidden usually, and it's chronic stress. So it's chronic and unknown stress. It can cause havoc with our bodies over time, with our physiology, with our immune system. So the kind of things we're looking here at here are repression, for example, pushing down feelings, being unable to say no, having a lack of awareness of one's own anger because it's so suppressed, finding yourself, what happens when you have this kind of way of coping in the world, and I was one of those people, is you find yourself in situations where you don't, or you are because you feel unable to express your emotions, your needs are ignored, and your gentleness is often exploited. And these are stress inducing, whether we know it or we don't. So repeated and multiplied over years, this has the potential of harming the balance in our bodies and our immune systems. So it is the chronic, mostly unknown stress, not the personality per se, that undermines our bodies, okay, and our immunity. It predisposes us to disease or reduces our resistance to it. So in my case, I moved to an area, a farming area, to live in the countryside to have a healthier lifestyle. And the irony is that I lived opposite a dairy farm, and they were spraying Roundup from little airplanes. They were spraying Roundup on the grass or whatever they were feeding the cows. And Roundup, as everybody knows, is banned in most countries in the world because it has been shown to be a major causative factor in cancer. And I was cycling off-road around this farm and around the area, and that spray was actually falling on my head. And I didn't even really think about it. I mean, I did know it was a chemical spray, but is that the only reason I got cancer? Absolutely not. The type of cancer I had can be triggered by chemicals such as Roundup. I had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. But not everybody who lived in that area got cancer or even got ill. So why did I? Because for me, there was a combination of factors. So I was the healthy eater. I was doing all those other things that I've talked about. But I was living with these pesticides on me all the time, actually for a couple of years. And I'd had a lifetime of having the kind of stuff I'm going to speak about today, this unknown, hidden psychological stress. I really didn't know I had it until somebody brought me a psychoneuroimmunology book. And I've spoken about that. And when I read that book, I knew that that's where I had to focus my healing, because I had unknowingly been running my life on unconscious limiting beliefs and coping mechanisms. Okay. So I'm not going to say any more about me, but just to say there were just two factors out of a whole lot of other factors that were major parts of why I got so sick. But the long-term chronic stress over time for me, when I look back on it, was a major factor. So that's why I'm so passionate about this. So yeah, it's the stress, not the personality per se. So what exactly are we talking about here? So it was in relationship to melanoma that the notion of a type C personality or a cancer personality was first proposed. They looked at a combination of character traits that were more likely to be found in people who developed cancer than in people who were free from it. So a type C personality in general can be described as someone who's extremely cooperative, patient, passive, lacks assertiveness, and are very accepting. In Gabor Mate's view, in his book called When the Body Says No, this type of personality also suppresses negative emotions, particularly anger, and really tries hard to maintain a strong and happy facade all the time. Yes, I'm looking at myself. So I'm not going to go into detail about the research studies. I can email that to you. If you want me to email you a summary of the research studies I pulled together here to put this together, my email will be in the show notes. You're welcome. I'll send it to you just as a document, of course, at no charge. So, but the summary of this research showed that these characteristics I'm going to go through next were not just seen in melanoma cancer patients, but also with most cancers, prostate cancer, leukemia, lymphoma, lung cancer. So we're talking about things here which on the surface may not seem like unhealthy ways to cope or be as a human being, because we're very often applauded and well liked because of some of these things. And I know that. So perfectionism is one of the things. Control, being in control, needing to be in control, going into a great amount of detail in every topic as a way of keeping anxiety at bay and finding silence uncomfortable. This is something in me I'm still working on, I'm working with. Being a pillar of strength for others, feeling really sorry for others and feeling really bad and guilty that we can't help others even when we're really, really ill ourselves. We feel bad about that if we've got this kind of way of dealing with life. We often therefore get into relationships, for example, with husbands, where we don't get good support, but we are the support. Very often these are people, as in my case, where we had to take care of our own mothers when we were children. We were our mothers when we were young. We often can't assert ourselves and our own needs. Now, I came across as very assertive and confident, but it was very, very hard for me, and it still is at times, to state my real needs and be my real authentic self and draw boundaries. We're very dutiful. Guilt is a very big thing, and often that's unknown. You may not know that guilt is underlying other emotions that you're feeling, like anxiety or fear. I had to drill down through quite a few layers of emotion to realize that actually underpinning a lot of my surface emotions was shame and guilt. Very easygoing on the surface, okay? Laid back, relaxed, love to be around people, and people love people like that. We're not stressed on the surface. I'm saying we because I was one of these people, and I'm still working with all of this. It's a journey. So, an external appearance of being a really good person, non-violent, not ever showing anger or frustration, avoid conflicts. But also, together with that, often becomes addictions. I've talked about the fact that I was a functional alcoholic, very functional, but I had a habitual drinking issue as one of my coping strategies. It could be smoking, it could be sex, it could be overworking. Very sad. I didn't present as a sad person, but underpinning so much of my life internally was just this deep sadness and feeling of being lost. Not talking about emotions, I was exceptionally emotionally repressed and I had no idea. It took me quite a while to access my anger. I was convinced I was not an angry person. I'd never been angry in my life. And when I started accessing the deeply suppressed anger, it was actually fury, but it had been so deeply suppressed because as a child, I was not allowed to express my emotions, and most certainly not anger. We'll talk about that a bit more. So, yeah, I mean, those characteristics in and of themselves are not bad things. It's good to be a kind, empathic, helpful, well-liked person. But unfortunately, if we're doing it as a habitual way of coping unconsciously, because in our childhood, our upbringing, our socialization, we were not allowed to express emotions. We had to be pleasing to our parents or those around us in order to get love and attention. We might end up just being that kind of person and assume that it's our personality, when actually it's just habitual patterns that we believe is an indispensable part of our personality. And let me get back to control again. I was an exceptional control freak, but that meant I was a very high achiever. I got stuff done. I was a perfectionist. It's another characteristic that goes with all of this. And I knew I was a control freak and a perfectionist, but I was just like, well, that's who I am. But actually, there is no innate personality characteristic in a human being that is controlling. What we see with the controlling person is an underpinning of deep anxiety. So you have to know how anxious so many people are because so many of us are control freaks. Unconsciously, what underpins this, unconsciously, so it's unknown, is that by controlling every aspect of our lives and environment, we will be able to ensure the satisfaction of our needs. So this comes from an infant or a child who perceives that his needs are unmet, as I said. And this then becomes an obsessive coping style to be anxious about all the details. And when we're unable to control events, we start experiencing great stress. So Loretta and I have talked about a lot of these things in many of our episodes, and we've connected all the dots here. We've unpacked them in different episodes. So I'm going to put the names and the numbers of the episodes in the show notes. I don't want to go through them all now. Emotional repression. So I'm just mentioning two overriding factors that can happen and were mine. Control is one, and the other is this emotional suppression or repression. It's a coping style. It's not a personality characteristic. It is not something that's set in stone. The interesting thing is, though, Gabor Mate says for his book, When the Body Says No, he goes into the applied psychoneuroimmunology research, but he then uses his own patients, a quarter of a century of patients. Okay, so we're not talking about 5 or 6 patients. And he uses them as case studies with their permission. He said that every single one of his patients who were sick, over a quarter of a century of patients, said that as children, if they were sad, upset, or angry, there was nobody that they could talk to about that. Even when the person, let's say a parent, was the one who had triggered the negative emotion. For me, I was not allowed to express emotions, and most certainly not anger towards my mother or any honest feedback. And it's not her fault. It's nobody's fault. We all parent from the best place we can and from our own past parenting. And Lorena and I have discussed this in detail in a few of our episodes. The only point to make here is the mother or father needing me as a person to be happy all the time and to not freak out or anything is a formula that trains a child into an adult that becomes stressed, depressed, sick, has a lifetime of patterns of repression. Yeah, and he says he's never heard of anyone with cancer or any chronic illness who said that they were allowed to express their emotions and their feelings as children. So it's actually just very interesting, there's nothing to blame in anyone in our socialization or upbringing, our parenting. It's not to blame ourselves because this is unknown most of the time. That's why we're bringing this information to you. I did not know that my life was underpinned by all this stuff because on the surface, as I've said before, successful, outgoing, popular, high achiever, very educated myself, etc., etc. And I got very validated for that because I ticked all the boxes. I had a very successful business. I traveled. I had lots of friends. And none of that per se is wrong. But in my case, so this is where the gold lies, okay? This is where the gold lies. If you have cancer right now and you're listening to this, or if you haven't got cancer and now you're scared you might get it because you're recognizing some of this, no. The only reason to bring all of this is it's actually the gold. It's the gift in illness. It's the gift in difficulty. Is if I hadn't got cancer, I would never gone on a journey to recognize that this unconscious programming was unknowingly running my show. And I was doing a whole lot of bypassing stuff to make myself feel better. But I could never have made myself feel better through healthy food, exercise, meditation, gratitude journals, countryside living, as long as this program was running my show, because my program really needed reprogramming because of my in utero and childhood experience. And I don't blame my mother. I love her. But it informed what I thought was my personality, but was actually just a whole bundle of coping mechanisms and limiting beliefs all tied up together. And I've been pulling that knotted up ball of wool, reprogramming my program. I've been doing that one day at a time since I had cancer 7 years ago. So that's why Loretta and I both say it sounds so trite and so like, oh, there's a gift in your illness. Cancer is a gift. Well, it can be. It really can be. Yeah, because it will take you, if you see, if you dig into your intuition, and if you're willing to take a look at some of the factors that may have caused it. And those are different for different people, but this was a major factor in mine. For other people, need to change their diet. They need to take more supplements. Some people need to get divorced. Some people don't need to do any of that, but they may need a spiritual journey. And then not only does healing happen, but your whole life improves. So we also talk about, we're going to do a whole episode on the difference between being healed and being cured. Being healed means you're able in every moment to live your best life. And that doesn't mean you don't feel feelings, or that you don't suffer, or that life's always easy. No. It means that you have an awareness, an intuitive capacity, and tools on how to deal with that moment to moment. So whether you live or die actually becomes irrelevant. Please, I'm not saying you should want to die, and I didn't want to die of cancer. But it opens up the opportunity to heal. That's what illness does. When our body says no, it is giving us symptoms as an opportunity to look inward and outward and ask ourselves, where does my healing lie? Okay. So I want to tag onto this so that this is just not just Loretta and I batting away at this message and Gabor Mate, because I speak about him a lot. I speak about psychoneuroimmunology a lot, because that was how I got this awareness. And Loretta has gone on her own journey, and she uses this together with her homeopathy and other things to heal people. So the Radical Remission Project, I've mentioned it before. Dr. Kelly Turner is a medical doctor who did research on why some people have spontaneous and radical remission from the incurable, mostly cancer. And she came up with 10 healing factors. I'll put the name of her book in the show notes, and there is a podcast called Radical Remission. Every week, there's an episode of somebody talking about healing from themselves from the incurable. And I talked on it, so you can also go and listen to my whole story there. But the reason I'm raising this is her research, long-term research, showed that out of 10 healing factors, only 2 or 3 of them were physical, as in eating and supplements. They're critical. Most people change their diets and they exercise more and all that when they get cancer, but all the other factors were psychological, emotional, connection issues or lack of connection, spiritual. So yeah, dive into that. And it's with so much pleasure and privilege that Loretta and I bring this to you, because it really, really can be a missing link in your healing. Whether it's your major focus to heal or it's just part of your healing journey, this is possibly a missing link. So one of the ways I want to make a few offers to you now. One of the ways that I uncovered my unconscious stuff, call it shadow stuff if you want, because it's so hidden. It was so hidden in me that this psychoneuroimmunology book had a shadow questionnaire in it. So you answer this questionnaire, then it tells you what your overriding shadow is, and that's the unconscious something that's running your show. And it's not always have negative consequences, that it can be a great strength sometimes, but often it's underpinned by limiting beliefs or some childhood stuff. So that was a eye-opener for me. It was one of the first things I did, and I'm so grateful I did, because it was a bit shocking to me what came out, because it was so suppressed, but I observed it and it ended up being true. And I worked with it as part of my healing. So I have that book is out of print, unfortunately. that it came from, but I've transcribed it and put it together in a document with the assessments. Okay, the assessments are very, very detailed. They're based on applied psychoneuroimmunology, and they are very specific to illness. They'll be helpful in your life in general, but if you're sick, they really could be a great quick insight into what is potentially happening that you don't know is happening. So for a very low fee, I will email that to you and I will email you back your results. And I'm happy also to do a short one-on-one session, but I'm not Loretta and I'm not a trained coach, but I could just take you through your results. And Loretta offers something called a holistic health assessment, which is the very first thing she does on her patients. And I think she's now willing to offer that, well, I'm sure, as a once off for a fee, but it gives you a very good insight into potentially what's going on in terms of your cancer or some chronic disease you've got. It's not always cancer. So those are two things that you can, you're welcome to call on us for. Potentially might be helpful, just putting that out there. And yeah, go back to the previous episodes. I'm going to list them below. And we are going to run a short workshop, a masterclass on feeling your feelings. Okay, we've done one on fear, and not being able to feel my feelings and learning how to feel them was big for me. And so that's why I'm passionate about bringing what I know to other people. So thank you for hanging in. I was going to make this 15 minutes and it's 27, but hopefully there was some value. If you think anyone could benefit from this, please copy the link and share it on a WhatsApp or directly on an email or something to someone. That's when they are most likely to pay attention. And thank you for being present. We really value you.